Helen Mirren, an Academy Award-winning actress. I'll probably never be able to mention Helen Mirren in the Killer Cross-Examination podcast again, but I can do it today. Helen Mirren portrayed my guest in the 2013 HBO made-for-TV film Phil Spector that detailed the defense of Phil Spector in his first trial for the murder of Lana Clarkson. It starred Helen Mirren and Al Pacino. My guest has also participated in a number of super high-profile cases, including Jayson Williams, Casey Anthony, Michael Skakel, and Aaron Hernandez, to name a few. She's an on-air host for the Law and Crime Network, and she's one of the foremost lawyers and experts dealing with forensic and scientific evidence in the world. I can't wait for you to meet and hear this episode of the Killer Cross-Examination podcast. My name is Neil Rockheim. My nickname is the Rockweiler for my unique and aggressive courtroom lawyering style. And my guest is superstar lawyer Linda Kenney Baden. Linda, welcome to the Killer Cross-Examination podcast. So my guest is Linda Kenney Baden, and she'll probably tell you that when I started this podcast, when I started talking about it, I was like, just felt like I'm in the presence of company. I'm still like blushing. I feel like I've just been watching you, not my whole life, but certainly a long time. So welcome to the Killer Cross-Examination podcast. I'm so glad you.
Thank you, but I'm not sure. I don't feel like really old.
Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit.
So, it's funny you say that though, because I've been doing this trial on Law and Crime. It's a little trial called Robert Durst. And one of the things the prosecutor is very good, but he kept calling people ma'am. And one day I was like, I exploded. It was like the kiss of death to call women ma'am. Like, stop it. I can't take it anymore.
So what's interesting is it's an interesting place to start, because I have been watching and reading about the Robert Durst trial in California since it started. So what's your connection to that case, if you have any?
Well, my really only connection is, actually I could go back, but let's start with, I am a host on Law and Crime. It's like an anchor, but we call ourselves hosts because we can give opinions. And for me, it's a part-time thing. I host or anchor 2 times a week for 3 hours, usually on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, except for the next couple of weeks where I'm going to be in and out because of the puppy, but that's another issue. And so we cover trials. We cover live trials. We get to watch other lawyers practice. We get to watch judges from all over the United States. And of course, we went from the Derek Chauvin trial right kind of out of the pandemic when we started going back to the studio to the Robert Durst case, which we have been following and covering every day. And now Mr. Durst is on the stand being cross-examined, and it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable to watch.
So I know of you, and I think it would be hard for anybody that has not taken the time to read some of the biggest cases of the day to know your involvement. But for those who don't, take us back, if you would, to how you got into criminal defense, how you got into trial practice, sort of how your career evolved to this point where you're such an icon.
Well, I can go really back really far. I mean, growing up, I just wanted to be one of 2 things, either a veterinarian, because I love animals so much, okay, or a lawyer. And my father was an immigrant off the boat, I should say. And he wanted nothing more than for his 2 daughters, because he didn't have any sons, to go to law school. And my sister was like, yeah. Left the LSAT. She really wanted nothing to do with it. She was like, so that kind of like put the burden on me. But I wanted to be a lawyer. I just wanted to be a lawyer. And I was enamored by watching reruns of an old show called Perry Mason. And I would sit, as a young kid and do reruns of that show and say, wow, could I make a difference? And I didn't really understand the concept of wrongful conviction back then, but I thought this was really great. And, I didn't understand the fact that Perry Mason was a man, and lawyering at that point was not considered a woman's job. It just didn't enter my realm of thinking. So I just kind of grew up wanting to be a lawyer and went to law school and came out and ended up in a clerkship in New Jersey from the presiding judge of our appellate division, which is our middle court in New Jersey. I'm now in New York, but in our middle court in New Jersey. And then, of course, when you clerk for somebody like that, you have to do your judge right. And so I went to a corporate law firm, which was not me for 8 months. It just was not me. But I learned a lot, and something we can talk about later on. I learned how the world works. It was a former governor's firm. And so I went to be a prosecutor. And I stayed as a prosecutor for a number of years. Was a trial team leader, tried one of the second in our county death penalty cases when it came back after the Furman decision, which I didn't even ask for death. I hated it. I just hated it. And decided to go into criminal law and went to start my own firm.
I was a prosecutor for a very short period of time. And I don't look back upon it with regret, other than I certainly learned a lot, and
Right.
I met a lot of really good people doing it. But by the end of my time in the prosecutor's office, I just didn't have the stomach for it. I was more interested in the defense lawyers and the how sophisticated and worldly and how they just seemed to lean in when other people leaned away. And I just admired that so much that I ended up I was like, okay, that tells me it was time to go.
But don't you think that it's certainly worthwhile, because it showed you the inner workings of the system, how you went back in chambers, you met the judges, where deals were had. And it really also gave you, to me, the thought, and I never thought anything else because my bosses were so good, that, you're out there to get the bad guy. You're not out there to convict the good guy, for bad things. You just don't do that. And so I came to the realization that the system has to work by ethical prosecutors. And when you don't have people who are interested in doing justice, the system can't work. So that was my first realization coming out of that. And I'm sure yours too.
So was it an easy transition for you when you left the prosecutor's office and went into private practice? Was it as easy as stepping over did it just come naturally to you?
Yes, it did, because I added to my repertoire. No one was doing a wrongful discharge at that point. The area of employment law was burgeoning. So I kind of felt that was akin. And also federal cases, 42 U.S.C. 1983 civil rights cases. And I even represent a number of police officers who were suing their employer for their civil rights being violated. So my practice kind of meshed and into all that. People who were shot by police. So it all kind of dovetailed together. So yeah, it was easy for me.
One of the things that you're particularly known for, if I can say that, is your knowledge of forensic science, the scientific aspects of trial law.
Right.
How did you become so well versed in that? How did that become an area that you just seem to dominate in?
Well, interestingly enough, it happened from the prosecutor's office that I was in. I was assigned to go to like the New Jersey State Police and learn from the chemist and learn about, that time we didn't have DNA, we had proteins, right? You match, if there was a rape, right? You matched proteins. And I actually, in Monmouth County, because I was so interested in this whole area, when we wanted to go to rape kits and to have a uniform system, the first assistant prosecutor at that point put me in charge of trying to get the whole thing going so that every hospital in the county of Monmouth in New Jersey would use a rape kit, and we'd all have the same forms, and we'd want to have nurses trained. And so that was early on when nobody was doing that. And we did. We agreed as a prosecutor's office to actually pay for the rape kits. There were the Cerci kits at that time. They were the only ones really being made. And also the forms, developed the forms so that everybody would get them. The hospital had one form, the same form that the prosecutors had, the police had, and all, in terms of the rape examination. So it kind of went from there. And
how did it evolve from that to where, I mean, look, for those who don't know, I don't think I could do, you ever watch Jim Carrey when he took a deep breath and he tried to rattle off like a bunch of, like, I don't think I could take a deep breath, and I could hold my breath for pretty long, and then try to get out all the cases in which you have either tried or been involved in as forensic trial counsel. I mean, but you're talking about some of the biggest cases of the day. Aaron Hernandez, Gilberto Nunez, Gigi Jordan, Casey Anthony, obviously the Phil Spector case, which I'm dying to talk to you about. I mean, the list continues on and on. It like occupies a page and a half of, F. Lee Bailey, may rest in peace, would be criticizing me and telling me to put my, this piece of paper down. But there's so many that I was blown away by the number of cases in which you have participated as forensic counsel.
Or trial counsel, or both, or whatever. Yeah. And I take a case.
That is a niche. Like, how did you carve? I mean, obviously you're well-spoken and a great communicator. But how did you get that niche?
I loved doing it, and I read everything about it. And I felt that forensic was the area, because when I was a prosecutor and I was assigned initially to what was called the evidence unit, which was like this place in the basement where all the evidence was piled with no rhyme or reason, and anyone could go in and take. I said, this can't be the way it operates. And then it became later on the forensic unit, and we had a truck and all, and it was really the forbearing. It was before CSI, it was called CSI. And so I had been assigned to that for my years as a prosecutor. And so I had to learn everything. I read everything, and it flowed. And people who know me were shocked, because, the reason I didn't go to become a vet was because I didn't really think I was really good at science. But I'm really good at this whole area.
You didn't think you're good at science.
Right.
What a misjudgment of your own abilities, because you're like the science lawyer.
Yeah, but the science lawyer, in the sense of you have to make it really easy for people sitting in that jury box. When we did Aaron Hernandez for it, and I was like, that's when this whole President's Council report was still up that President Obama had, and it challenged a lot of the sacred cows of forensic science, said they had not been validated. And so we actually went on that when it came to challenging the firearms identification in Aaron Hernandez. And people said, oh, this is going to be boring. Well, I had so many motions there, visited so many crime labs, and it wasn't boring at all. And for a day and a half, it was like a ping pong. The jury I'd be asking a question, the witness be answering, it was like ping pong. And the jury be smiling at me and looking, because you can make it interesting, and you can make it important. And you have to make it important if you're talking to people. If you're talking about DNA, you have to make it important and interesting.
But that is a real skill. That is not just the ability to know that material in general and to know it in your case, but to be able to explain it, not just to a group of people in general, but to the specific people who you have been selected to that jury. Because you don't know, you're not talking about necessarily a group of engineers, or even you have a mix and you got to play to all of them.
Well, the most important person initially to play to is the judge, because you are coming in and you really have to educate the judge to the point where, because they've been brought up in the prosecutorial world, and usually the world of, forensics is sacred, everything in forensics is good, that you at least, even though you're not going to get things barred, you have to convince the judge to allow you to cross-examine on areas. And that's important, because if you can do that, you can get to the brains of those jurors sitting there, because they'll get it.
So let me ask you some things about some cases you've handled, and then I want to flow into your particular style in the courtroom. So first of all, obviously, I mean, you would know this, but I followed the Phil Spector case quite closely. And you ended up taking on that case, and you were lead counsel for a significant period of time in that case.
Right.
Am I right?
You're correct.
Tell me about that case, what you can. So you had you had top experts. Alan Jackson was the prosecutor in that case. Was that right?
That's correct. And he's now representing Harvey Weinstein in the California case.
So
See?
180 degrees. So tell me what that case was like when you got involved in it.
Okay, so when I first got involved in it, I was actually the forensic coordinator, even though no one knew it except for the team, for the case in New Jersey of an NBA basketball player named Jayson Williams, who was accused of murdering by shooting with a skeet shotgun a substitute limousine driver for the night in his place in New Jersey. There was a basketball team that was involved and all sorts of things like that. But I have to go back because I got involved in the Jayson Williams case because I was trying so many federal cases, not just state cases, federal cases, and winning them. And usually in our court, New Jersey federal court, you had to go 12-0. The judges wouldn't do this, we're going to have 7 jurors, mimic the state system. You had to go 12-0. And I had won so many cases that I was kind of getting known. And my understanding is that the then wife of Jayson Williams called her cousin or relative who was one of the clerks there and said, who's the worst, and I'm going to use this language, fucking badass lawyer that you know of, because I need to hire whoever that is. And my name was given. So I went and interviewed, and I did the Jayson Williams case, and I was not in the courtroom because at that point I went by the name of Linda Kenney. All my bar certificates, everything was Linda Kenney. Everyone knew me. All my cases are under Linda Kenney. They were not under Linda Kenney Baden at all. So people who didn't know I was married to Michael Baden or living with Michael Baden just didn't know because they didn't make that assumption. But Michael had been hired by the attorneys to look at the autopsy in that case and possibly testify. So there was a question. I said, look, I don't really want to be in the courtroom on this one because you've already got your team in place. You've got your lawyers in place, but I'll do forensics. So we set up a system that I was outside the courtroom. I was across the street in an office, and this was the early days, would follow the feed on court TV, and then I would text back to everybody in the courtroom, object, this type of thing. It was early on, and it's true, and that's what happened, and so that we,
like from the movie Runaway Jury.
Well, kind of like, yeah. So Jayson did not get convicted. Jayson's still a client of mine, did not get convicted of that. And then I was in that case and did not get convicted. And Phil Spector at this point learned all of that because it was an accidental shooting that we contended was not a crime. And said, I apparently said to somebody, I want this woman, Linda Kenney, involved, not knowing that at that time I was married to Michael Baden again. And he had been hired by one of the previous attorneys on his team. So I get a call to come out and meet Phil Spector. And I disclosed immediately. And he said, I don't care. I just don't care. I want to meet you. And I was on the West Coast for a scientific meeting. And I flew down to meet him and was hired. So when I got into that case, it was a forensic case, as you know, and the attorneys there had really not, the new attorneys, because he'd been through a slew of attorneys, didn't really know forensics. And so I came in and I went to the office of the attorneys who were representing him. It was really a white collar firm. And I asked made arrangements. I wanted to see what they had in terms of discovery. And so I remember this young woman who was the law clerk wheeled this, very nicely kept cart, with all these files. They were in perfect order and the color coded and this and that. And I spent about 3 hours looking for them. And I called her back and I said, could you tell me, and I think one of the lawyers came back that was assigned to the case. Could you tell me where the bench notes are? And it may be the look that you're going to give me too. And she turned to me and she said, what are bench notes? And I said, Houston, we have a problem. Because bench notes are the backup in the lab for the scientific testimony. When you get a report, as you know, which is usually 2 pages, it just has a conclusion. That conclusion is meaningless unless you see how the scientists got to that conclusion. And that usually means hundreds of pages of laboratory notes that are behind that conclusion. And unless you have those, you really can't see if the conclusions are valid or not valid. And they'd had no idea that there were such things, had not gotten discovery. And so off we went for motions. And by the way, the case had a trial date in about 4 weeks when I did that. And so obviously it was put off and moved to the next year. So that's how I got, that's the short story.
Well, that's the short story of how you got involved in the case.
Right.
Now, I know in the beginning of the case that when I was following it, Bruce Cutler, who had quite a big reputation as an aggressive cross-examiner, was participating in the defense of the case as well. And then I believe at one point there was a real conflict between he and the judge. And then at some point, I believe you slid in and took control of really the entire case. Is that true?
Kind of. The upshot is really true. We had a number of motions and had forensic analysis, and I had brought in all the experts and a number of other attorneys that were co-counsel in the case. There was 5 of us. And so Bruce was the titular head at that point. But yes, it wasn't so much the conflict with the judge. He was filming a TV show at the time he's trying a murder case. But the biggest problem was the fact that there was a witness, a woman who's now since deceased, who really, in our opinion, was still in love with Philip at the time that we tried the case. And instead of making her our witness, because she would have, talked about nice things, you ended up with a cross-examination like she was some kind of mafia informant, underground informant, and she ended up talking about Philip with rape by gunpoint. And it was like at that point that it was everybody on the team said, this guy can't stay here. I mean, we thought we could minimize him, but he can't stay here. So it was really up to Philip at that point. And it's no secret that I did say at one point to someone that if Mr. Cutler does not leave this case at this point, Philip might as well just pack up his toothbrush right now because he's going to go away. So needless to say, Philip didn't go away, but Bruce Cutler did.
I mean, that's as big a stage with as high, significant a consequence as you can get, not to mention all of that turmoil, the extra turmoil and the tumult that came along with it. How long did the trial last?
I went out in April. We had motions that went through May, and then we opened there after, and we actually had a very late September.
So you're talking about 5 months you were out there?
Basically. And as for several of those weeks, as you may know, I could not participate in the trial because I ended up with double mycoplasma pneumonia. And I was ordered out either to a hospital or to bed rest, or else I was told I could die. Simple as that. Matter of fact, the doctor who examined me said, if you either don't go to the hospital or stay in bed and don't move for the next few days, you will die. So that was kind of like, okay, I think I'll listen to you now.
What were some of the moments, Linda, where you were going through that case, where you were in the courtroom, where you felt like things were, let me ask it differently. Did you feel that there were moments where you guys were prevailing in the case, that you were getting through to the jury, that you thought that you were ultimately going to be able to prevail, or was it just an uphill battle the entire time?
Well, it was a little bit of both. We thought that we did have the forensics. Turns out, and we had most of the jury selection correct, except for one person. So we really thought that we had at least a good case to hang the jury, which, as you know, was very difficult with all the other allegations involved. I was always hopeful that we could win it, but at least hang it. And if you could hang it enough times and hang it with a good number, that perhaps the case would not be retried. So that was really.
What do you mean when you say that you thought you had the juries? I mean, I know what you mean, but I'm curious for you to explain that further, what you mean by that.
Yeah, well, if you could actually have a jury that's 7-5 for innocence, for not guilty, prosecutors' offices may not spend the money to retry because it's such a split in how the juries think. And so that was, if anything, if we couldn't get a not guilty, that was the hope.
And did you use a jury consultant or in that case?
Yes, we actually use a jury consultant, and we also, I will not try a major case without either a focus group or a mock jury. And we did have a focus group, a number of focus groups in that case. And I'm sure the prosecutor did also.
Now, it's my understanding that the after the trial, did you continue to remain in contact with Phil Spector? Did you remain on pretty good terms with him, or did things just sort of turn south?
No, pretty good terms until the HBO movie, when his now divorced, Phil's dead, but his now divorced wife got involved. And I'm still on very, very good terms with his daughter, Nicole.
Tell me if you would. So HBO made a movie. Did you participate in the movie as a consultant or as somebody who had a role in it? Were you surprised at the way the movie portrayed him, or you kind of take me behind the scenes there, if you would?
All right, this is a story that is actually, I think, kind of funny. So I forget what happened, but I was going to California with my girlfriends, finally for a trip to a spa, because I had come out of some trial and I forget what it was. I was really tired and all. And I'm there and I'm like, oh, this is day number 2. All right. And one of my girlfriends had a medical emergency. And so I figured, okay, we'll start day number 3. We'll be going day number 3. It'll be relaxing. And all. So I get a call, and I remember I get a call on my cell phone, and the number is somebody I didn't know, whatever, but I answered it. And it said, hello, Linda. Okay. You don't know me, but this is Dave Mamet, with that voice of David Mamet. He said, I've written a screenplay about you. Would you like to read it? And you first think this is about the time of Punk'd, right?
Right.
I'm like,
yeah.
I'm getting
right. You're waiting for it's like your birthday. You're waiting for somebody to pop out and go like, surprise.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just doing this to me because I spent the day in the hospital with my girlfriend,
Right.
or I haven't even had a vacation.
Yeah, sure. Hang up.
Yeah. This is sure. And I said, sure. I mean, are you gonna say no? Sure. Okay. Well, do you have an email address? Sure. I give an email address, and within like 5 minutes comes a script, and it says David Mamet. It really is David.
It's like
Mamet.
That scene from American President. You know what I mean? This is Andrew Shepard, and they go like, hang up. No, this is the president, and they hang up again. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. So now, of course, let's see, do I do the massage that I have planned, or do I read this script? I think I'll read the script. Okay. So I read the script, and there are a number of technical things wrong, like you may spell the word splatter instead of spatter, and that was not necessarily one of them, but there were a number of like forensic technical things wrong. Not I'm talking about the specifics with the case, but just the verbiage that you would use is wrong. So I called back and I said, Mr. Mamet. He said, call me Dave. Dave, okay. Yeah, thank you very much. It's lovely that you think of me like this, but you do have a couple technical things wrong. And he said, can you email them to me? And I'm like, okay, now let's see. The massage is going, the boxing class is going. I said, sure. So I sent him back the short email. And within like 5 minutes again, I get a corrected script. Literally, I can't even get out of the room. So I call him back again, and I say, it's fine, but you missed one of them. He said, just bear with me. He hung up. 5 minutes again, new script. Call him back, and I said, Mr. Mamet, why are you doing this? And he said, and I remember this. He said, I want to make you happy. And I'm thinking, yeah. I like to go to my massage and be happy. I'd like to go with my girlfriends, and be happy. But he was very gracious and all. And it was a script that basically, there's always an arc to a script, but basically assumed that Phil Spector was innocent, that the white jacket, which we always believed, proved him innocent, and all. And so the next thing I know is I get a call from him the next day to say, would you like to be a consultant on this movie? And he said, I'll have HBO call you. And I get a call from HBO. I said, look, I can't consult on a movie if I have to give up any attorney-client secrets. I just can't. I mean, I can't even tell you whether what Mr. Mamet wrote is correct. is incorrect, is right, or thinking is right, if any of this happened, I can't tell you that. They said, that's fine. I said, I want that in the contract. I want it in the contract. It protects you, it protects me. And so they put it in the contract. The next thing I know, I was a consultant on the movie, and that's what happened. But they kept trying. People kept trying to say, "Well, is this the way it happened?" And I kept saying, "Can't tell you, can't tell you." But everyone assumes it was, so it's fine.
So in that case, you had assembled, I think, in a way, sort of an all-star Hall of Fame forensic scientist, a forensic expert list, right? I mean,
and when I didn't have assembled for the courtroom, I had retained for consultation. Whoever you didn't see in the courtroom was retained for consultation. So
I mean, the list was incredible. I think, was it Vince DeMeo? Was he one of your experts in that case?
DeMeo, yeah.
And I think Werner Spitz, he was an expert in that case. And I don't recall if your husband was an expert, but he might have consulted. I don't know.
Yeah, he was. And then also, when we got into the case, there was this whole issue of blood spatter on the sleeves of Phil Spector, and would there have been more if he's, in somebody's mouth shooting a gun? And so the prosecution was quoting in the case this article by a scientist out on the West Coast. So I just said to my team, let's pick up the phone and call this guy. And he said, that's not what this article means. And so I hired him too, and he came in and testified. Because what you say in your career thing that I've printed out, criminal defense, is that you have to have the money to fight. And so if you have the clients with the money, they may not level the playing field because, as you're having gazillions amount of people working for the prosecution team and unlimited funds, but at least they can give you a shot at possibly getting, I believe, the truth out there, or certainly a good defense out there.
And, I was watching, going to change subjects here for a second, but I was watching, and I have watched, as I told you, with great interest and enthusiasm, the Robert Durst trial.
Right.
And I know as you've shared, that you've watched the trial too, and you've also watched it as a host on it's the Law and Crime Network, right?
Dan Abrams. It's a Dan Abrams network.
Yes.
A number of things. Right.
So tell me what you think of what happened to Elizabeth Loftus. I'm sure you know her. I'm sure you've worked with her. She's one of the most, probably one of the most significant researchers in eyewitness testimony, memory retention, short-term recall. You watched that. I mean, what was your impression? If you're willing to share it, what did you think of her testimony, the cross-examination, the impression that was left on the jury?
Well, she absolutely is the leading researcher. And I think that what happens though, when you get in the courtroom with any scientific testimony, the scientists get demeaned, right? Because science is the reproducibility, but it may have an error rate in it, and it may not necessarily apply, or jurors may not like it or think it applies. And I think that's the basic flaw in the courtroom, that we don't respect the scientists in the courtroom. And she's telling us what we all know, right? Memory is fallible. Somebody comes and after 40 years, all of a sudden says they remember something. It's suspect, isn't it? It's suspect. And we all know that, but we make fun of that in cross-examination when you say it, and it shouldn't be, because that's something we all know. I mean, I've had situations, if we look back at our own, right, situations where you thought you left something, you left your case, you left your file someplace, and it turns out it's absolutely not true. It's sitting there on your sofa or on your desk, and you never took it to the other office. Memory is fallible, and for people to get be on the stand 5 days to be cross-examined about clients because you don't like the clients. I mean, the science is the science, no matter what the client, no matter who the client. And
so I was surprised that there were a couple of things that I was surprised at. I was very surprised to see that the prosecutor in that case was able to mention each of the individual cases, like of all the cases that I'm sure Elizabeth Loftus has reviewed or consulted on, to mention and I would tell this to John's face if I were talking to him, the same thing.
That's
To
right.
be able to mention,
He'll call you if he watches this podcast and doesn't like it. John tends to call all of us.
he's called me. He's called. So, but I'm surprised. Yeah, and he has watched, and he has watched this. So, John Lewin, how you doing? If you're watching, but we've watched. I was watching the discussion about each of these cases that she had become involved in, and just throwing the names out.
Right.
Mentioning Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, who else? The one who I'm drawing a blank now. Ted Bundy.
Ted Bundy, right.
I mean,
right.
And then to label all the people that you get involved in, and you speak on behalf of, who are rapists and child molesters. I thought, and the judge is letting all of that in.
Right. And he's letting everything in. He's letting everything is coming into this courtroom for the prosecution, in my opinion. It kind of does remind me of Spector in that regard. There's just there's no gatekeeping from what I can see. And yet when the defense wants to get some things in, there's an objection. And
I will say I saw something really, I do think that the way that John ended up cross-examining, I think it was Doug Oliver, I thought that was a particularly clever, ingenious way, if the judge will let you do it, which is to go at the incredibility of the witness before you even get to any potential substance. So by the time you get to substance, you've dirtied him up, and you've dirtied up Durst, right? You've dirtied this guy up, and you've dirtied up Durst before you ask him anything at all.
Right, and that's what he's done to every witness that could offer something to benefit Durst. He's an excellent cross-examiner,
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
When he's not over the top, okay? And he knows this case. He really is an excellent prosecutor, and I've said that. I said, but there's sometimes you got to pull back, right? There's sometimes you can't be, always, at your face, because it just gets annoying. And if you get one juror who's annoyed, they may say, yeah, Durst is guilty, but I don't like this guy either.
I have complimented him about that one cross-examination, because I thought his cross-examination of Doug Oliver, again, you have to know your audience, right? You have to know the environment you're in, which is a key. You have to remember, years ago when I was a clerk, running back and forth for, some law firms nearby, trying to file things. I went into a courtroom without a jacket or a tie on. And there was a very serious judge back in the day who was known for, whomever comes in his courtroom, you better be wearing a jacket and a tie. And I got dressed down, and I never forgot that as a lesson of know your judge, know your environment, know where you are.
Right.
But I've watched, because I have thought, I do think John is he clearly has got skill. He clearly knows this subject matter. And I thought, as I was watching, there were times where I sat there and said, come on, Liz, you know what to say right here. Like, you know what to say at this particular moment. But she seemed like she was really on the defensive for a good 3 days.
Yeah, and the point that never was made, and I kept writing it down, is that she's done so much work for people who are victims. People who are convicted, who are wrongfully convicted because of eyewitness testimony. They are victims, and that didn't come across to me in her answers. That was the one.
Wouldn't a great answer somewhere along the way have been, if any of you prosecutors were willing to call me as a witness, to take the stand as part of the state's case, the government's case, and to look the jury in the eye and tell them that the eyewitnesses that you're relying on may not be reliable for the following 10 reasons, I'm game. I'm happy to testify as an expert for the prosecution if the prosecution is interested in putting me in there and letting me tell the jury, hey, if you choose to believe him, that's your decision, but here are a bunch of things that you ought to consider before you decide to do it.
That would have been a great response.
A great response. And I didn't see that, unfortunately. And I think that she came away with a couple of good, I don't want to say black eyes, but she came away with a couple of, good black eyes, a couple of good shiners.
With the exception of the fact that he was so at her all the time. And this is where the man came in. I was like, if he calls her man.
I saw that. And I know there were so many people I know who were cringing. Dr. Joe Biden had to be cringing at that with
I just say, I don't know if you follow it, when he asked Durst, how do you want to be called? Robert, Rob, we've had this conversation. Bobby, Mr. Durst, he said, you may call me sir. It was a true cat and mouse beginning between the two of them today. It was riveting to watch.
So some things I want to ask you. So I believe in being yourself. And I know that's sort of a phrase that all the trial schools and the directors of the trial schools throw around, I think a bit too much. Be yourself, be yourself. And I know what that means. It means don't pretend. But so I tend to be someone who from time to time can crack a joke. And if you have a sense of humor, you can of course step on toes occasionally if you miss the mark or it's the wrong time. I can tell you're someone that can laugh at a good joke. And you're someone who can tell a pretty good joke too. How do you use laughter if you're comfortable using it in the courtroom? And I tie this into the Durst case because there's a lot of laughter going on in this very, very serious case.
Well, let's start with Durst and go backwards on that. For instance, yesterday, and we talked about this today on the air, there was a demonstration by the defense. It was a unique opportunity to show how Robert Durst had engaged with Morris Black, a case in Galveston where he was found not guilty of killing a man named Morris Black. And it really was an incredible opportunity to do it, which people are labeling as bizarre and they've never seen it before. But what happened is it ended up being a comedy because the judge said something to the effect that Mr. Chesnoff, who is also a brilliant attorney from Nevada, Mr. Chesnoff was doing his best Hollywood fall or something on the ground. And then John Lewin actually had a funny line, which is, I don't know who to root for here, as David Chesnoff and Dick DeGuerin are rolling on the ground with a gun and all. And then it ended up being a comedy routine. And I think there was no place for it there.
And then there were moments to add to that, because I've watched it a couple of times. And there were moments where the judge said, well, that was that version of that, which look, with all due respect to the judge, I just didn't find that word to be appropriate. And then he chimed in, and this is my favorite part of the trial.
Right.
It turned the whole thing into a caricature.
Right. It was a character. And then, I just thought that was inappropriate. And it got out of hand and it demeaned the courtroom. Also demeaned the courtroom when he called defense counsel. I forget what it was. John Lewin called DeGuerin slimy, I think. I'm a big one for
today, or was that yesterday, or was that
yesterday?
I know that they had then they butted heads about Elizabeth Loftus's book, where she talked about a prosecutor with short hair and a long thin nose, you know what I mean, and
right,
a 6'2", and then they joke back and forth about you're not referring to, obviously not you, and not you, Mr. Chesnoff. It was a lot of. So I get back to the point.
So yeah, your point.
Yeah.
Laughter can be interesting. I mean, you always remember that in the cases we're trying, where there is obviously a murder victim, your client did not do it, you're contending, but you have a family or relatives in the back of the well behind you. And laughter can be totally disrespectful to them. And I really think that in that situation, you have to be very careful. But there are times that somebody will say something funny and everybody in the courtroom laughs, and it's a brief moment of respite, right? Just a brief moment where you're all on the same page. The judge, even a defendant can laugh. And as long as you don't have a TV camera pointing at the defendant or you and saying, look at that defendant laughing in the courtroom, it's okay. It's okay to laugh at yourself. I laugh at myself in a courtroom. I call myself with the Jersey accent, right? If I'm out someplace out, and I'll do it because I'm laughing at myself. And then people are like, oh, okay, yeah, she has a Jersey accent. Okay, fine. But there's a point where it just becomes, it's not appropriate. And I think
self-deprecating is to a certain point, self-deprecating, if it's in your personality, which it is in mine. I make fun of myself all the time. But it has to be genuine, and you have to measure it, right? You can't just. It's not a vaudeville act where you're up there, because there are lives at stake.
Right, exactly.
And one of the concerns I had watching that trial, I can't tell who's laughing, so I can't tell if it's the jury or if it's people in the back. or both, but I couldn't tell during the Durst trial, given the enormity of the stakes for Robert Durst and for we've got three families really, right? We've got Durst and Kathy, I think what's her maiden name? McCormick? What's that?
Kathy McCormick.
McCormick.
Right.
And obviously, you know, those that were involved in the Morris Black case, and then obviously those that were involved in, you know, the Susan Berman and were friends and family of hers. I mean, what an enormous, you know, case.
Right.
And the laughter sometimes can just get to a point where you can almost, the jury can just sort of start to tune out the serious moments. You know what I mean? I mean,
No, exactly. And there've been some funny moments where President John Lewin has, as you said, been self-deprecating about, well, you know, yeah, it's the first time someone can't hear me or something, and people laugh and there's a little chatter and all, but I think that it has a place, but it also doesn't have a place. And
so what do you think? So this trial, whenever I've tried to, I've tried to give to people that are close to me or people that I want to share my interest in this trial, I've asked them sort of to try to give them the elevator pitch of what this case is about. And it's really difficult because it's almost impossible for people to believe that he's essentially on trial for a disappearance of his wife back in the 80s?
1982, right.
Essentially being retried as having gotten away with murder for his acquittal in the Morris Black case. And now he's on trial actually for Susan Berman, but it's really like three murders in one.
Right. We're trying three cases in one, even though there's only going to be one guilty if he is convicted for the Susan Berman murder. The other cases are, you know, being let in for whatever they're being let in for, that he has a pattern of you know, doing things and then saying he panicked, or that he had the motive to kill Susie Berman because she knew that he had killed, according to the prosecution, his wife, Kathy McCormick Durst. So it's all coming in. And quite frankly, I'm really surprised about the Morris Black case. If you said to me, okay, this is the theme for the motive is the motive of for the killing of Susie Berman, that she knew that he had killed his wife and she was going to tell the reopened investigation, I can buy that. The Morris Black case, I think, was really on the line.
So I want to ask you a little bit about 404B. That's what we call it here. Obviously, I know California, they may have a different rule. I think they call it 352 or 1,000. I was trying to follow.
Whatever. I kind of tune them out because we all know what they mean, right?
Right. So, but before I get there, because I know you had to confront a variety of that type of evidence in the Phil Spector case.
Right.
Tell me how do you think your style?
Well, let me go back. Let me go back a little bit. We tried a case several years ago, as you know, a little case called Aaron Hernandez. Everybody in that jury knew, even though it wasn't allowed into evidence, that he had been convicted of a murder beforehand, and now we've been trying for a double homicide. Okay, so it's, you know.
Well, I hate 404B evidence. I think it's ridiculous. I think it is, in my opinion, it is ridiculous. I've watched judges let it in. I've watched prosecutors try to come up with these, to contort themselves like a human contortionist, to come up with an explanation for how it's not character evidence, you know, and I hate it because you end up trying a case in a case. And we all know, I don't care what you tell the jury. You could tell the jury, look, you can't think anything about this other than, but you're drawing attention to the fact that it is something else that is significant. It's like saying, don't pay attention to the fact that, you know, you killed your first wife in the trial of your, you know, in an assault case involving your second wife. Just don't use it improperly.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's, you know, and I watch it, and I talked to Tom Ezra about that, he was adamant about the fact that how did this end up happening where Bill Cosby was a hung jury, and then the second trial went from one accuser and one 404B witness to now 5 other witnesses. He's like, what was the methodology? What was the rationale? And he just kept saying that in his opinion, it didn't make any sense. It's just character assassination.
Yeah, that's all. That's really all it comes down to. And I think, you know, you and I both know it wasn't meant to be that early on. It was meant to be that signature. You had a murderer who went in and like the Zodiac killer, right?
Yeah, that guy goes in the second story, like a second story man, where he goes in and he leaves, he pees in a plant before he leaves, and they find, you know, or he leaves
Right.
a lipstick kiss on the wall or something, you know? I
That's
mean,
what it was meant to be. That and but that's exactly, but it is now evolved into a way to convict somebody when there is no evidence on the main case and you think there is a bad guy. Now that doesn't mean there isn't a bad guy, that the person defendant's not a bad guy, but you want to make sure you get that person if you're the
okay.
prosecutor. And all this
So tell me about how would you characterize your style in the courtroom? So how did it begin, and how do you think it has evolved and changed, if it has, to this point today?
Quite frankly, my style really has not changed from when I was a prosecutor. I believe in talking to the jury. Okay. I believe, first of all, going back, I believe that jury selection is the most important part of any trial, that you win or you lose a case in jury selection, that you could pick the best jury, you know, that you think, but if it's not the right jury for your case, okay, and they're not going to listen to what you're going to say, you can't win the case. You've lost it already. You could have a great jury for your case and do something in the courtroom that will cause you to lose a case, but you have to pick that right jury. You have to pick a jury, or at least some of the jurors are going to listen. And going back to Phil Spector, we had identified one person who we thought would, under no circumstances, convict Phil Spector. And when that person got into that jury box, we actually cut short our jury selection at that point. It said, jury's fine, Your Honor.
Okay,
That's
I know the tactic.
So having done that,
What was the tactic? Just verbalize that for me and for people who are listening. What was the rationale for cutting short the jury selection at that point?
Because we know that that person that was in that jury box was not going to buy the prosecution evidence, that they were not going to find the prosecution evidence compelling or proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And therefore, rather than using the other challenges which lawyers get to remove people from the jury, we said, nope, we agreed, we're not going to use them anymore. The prosecution had said the jury is fine, and we now say the jury is fine, Your Honor, and we have the one jury that if all goes wrong, will make sure that Phil Spector was not convicted. In our theory, using a trial consultant to identify.
I mean, and I get it, because I see lawyers that have these they decent jurors. First of all, I know the people that get up there and they, oh, that person's a teacher, that person's a nurse, that person's an engineer, they're out. Well, this person is, you know, and they just use these sort of rampant stereotypes that I think are awful, that make, you know, no sense. They're just based on, you know, I don't know, old wives' tales, I guess. Can you say old wives' tales now?
I don't
spouse's
think
tale.
you can, but they're based on no sense. I cringe when people say they don't like jury consultants. I cringe when people say, oh, I don't have the money for focus groups, or I don't want to use a focus group. My heart, I can pick a jury. I just cringe, because the reason why my clients have not been convicted is because I use a jury. So
jury selection is the most important part of the trial for you. And obviously you value being able to talk to the jury. So is there something that you're looking for? Do you ask, I presume you ask open-ended questions, but and let the jurors talk, or are you trying to educate them, or do a little bit of both?
Well, it depends on what my jury consultant says, doesn't it? If my jury consultant says, well, we need to focus on this, that's what I'm going to focus on. So it's different for every trial. Absolutely different for every trial.
How about opening statement? So there are some people that like to lie. I know each case is different, but have you looked back at a particular opening where you thought to yourself, when you got done, you said, man, Linda, I just killed it in that one? Or have you, or another on the other end of the spectrum where you've gotten down and sat down and thought like, geez, that didn't come out the way I thought it would come out at all?
Not if you're prepared. It better come out the way you thought it come out. and you better have it prepared, and you better put as much in as you can. And of course, it is an opening statement, not an opening argument, right? All right. However, as we all know,
this is the most important. However,
your opening statement really is an opening argument, and it is going to set that jury, and they will, you know, listen to you if you have piqued their interest at that point. So if you've selected that jury and you've piqued their interest, you better do a really damn fine job on opening statement, because it'll wash away some of the sins in case you screw up during the trial testimony.
Do you ever have to, during jury selection, do you ever have to tell the jurors ever talk about your past cases, your notoriety, your celebrity? Do you ever have to do they ever want to know that about you? Do you ever have to have that exchange with them?
No, and there's only one juror that I remember who was in the news media in the case I had that would have known who we all are. Most, we think that, we go around and we're like, the trial lawyers in heaven, everybody knows us. We go to bar meetings or we do TV. And quite frankly, no one knows who we are, okay? No one knows who we are. I remember trying a case in Middlesex County, New Jersey. It was a civil case, it wasn't a criminal case, where it was against Brown and Williamson Tobacco Company. And they had just been on 60 Minutes the night before about what a bad tobacco company they were and all. And so the judge was like, oh, we have to do a voir dire here and all. No one had watched 60 Minutes. No one cared. It's the same thing with us as lawyers. They don't, the days of having that famous lawyer that everybody looked at, which was really F. Lee Bailey, right? He's the last one people that knew. Because if you
Johnny Cochran,
yes.
Johnny probably got there, but F. Lee Bailey
Johnny got there, right? Johnny absolutely got there. Johnny was a superstar, having co-counseled a lot of cases with Johnny. You went with Johnny anywhere, and it was like you could hear the chatter before you got Johnny's. You just heard it. I mean, he really was a superstar. And people who said they were on the other side were waiting in depositions for books. They were waiting to hand them books to sign. No matter what it was. It was amazing to be with Johnny. But other than that, who else got there? Barry Sheck and Peter Neufeld are there because of DNA, maybe. Maybe. But the days of other people being there, I don't think they are.
I watched
Jose
a very well-known lawyer get in front of a jury, and when the judge asked the question, do you know any of the lawyers? And none of the jurors responded. He got up and he go, "You don't know me? You guys know me." So
now I said that also. If I'm in the Hispanic community with Jose Baez, everybody knows him. Everybody knows Jose.
I mean, he's another superstar. I mean, so I would say you too, but that, because I put you.
But I try not to be. I try to be, I don't really get out there that much. I know you think it's out, but I really don't. I'm very meek. People will walk past me and,
Okay,
because that's I can't do what I do unless I'm quiet.
I'm probably going to get, what do you mean you can't do what you do unless you're quiet?
Well, because I have to be able to file motions and go into laboratories and talk to people and all. And I can't be looked at as being like their hater. I have to be looked at, they're scared of me as a lawyer, but I have to be, I just can't be like, I'm going to make a scene when I'm doing things. I just can't. Whereas other people can,
Fair enough. I thought I would follow up on that because it's something you said and I was curious what you meant by that. All right. So I'm probably going to get an answer. So this will be like a jury selection question here. Okay. So you have to provide some answer other than it depends. Okay. So you got to give me some answer.
Wait. EOS webcam utility. Okay. Let me ask you about that after.
You got to give me some answer put yourself somewhere on the spectrum other than in the middle. Okay. So when you start off a cross-examination you tell me, do you prefer to be able to lean in and chop the witness's leg off right away? Are you cagey and sort of trying to like F. Lee, God bless him, but he was like, hey, I try to watch him and get a sense of when I can pounce. Jeff Lichtman was like, I want to smother him from the moment that I get up there until the moment that there's a break. So you can't give me the answer, it depends, because I know it depends. But
okay.
Where are you in that spectrum?
I'm Italian. All right. Both of my parents are Italian. That should be the answer. I would like to get in and chop everybody's legs off. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes I have to be nice. And also it's also whatever role I am playing. I don't mean role in the sense I'm role playing, but sometimes, you have a police officer up there who, and it is very gender oriented sometimes, and they look at this person like, she's not going to get to me. And we do get right into it right off the bat, right? And we do. And I will go after them. But if they're respectful, and other times with police officers, we're going to have a conversation now, and we go back and forth, and the jury's watching us. because, you want the jury to like you no matter what you do, right? When you're in the courtroom, right? When you come into that well, and that's the area, that's where beyond where the spectators are sitting or used to sit when we used to have trials that were watched, and the judge is sitting, that jury, if they're there or if you're moving, they have to follow your every move. You have to be the leader there, right? So sometimes you want them to root for you when you're going after the person, and other times you want them to root for you because you are respectful of the witness.
I will tell you, I tried a case in which the prosecutor called an expert who was totally, I mean, he was so ridiculous. And I can deal with someone who's ridiculous, but he went after an associate of mine in the case. And I got up there and I started hot and I got hotter. And the whole rest of the trial, I was never in that, I was never in that red zone. And I sat down and I thought to myself, it was a case that I thought I should win. And I sat down and I thought, okay, well, I hope that the jurors understand that I'm not being an asshole. I'm not like losing it, but I really wanted to convey, you can do whatever you want in there, but don't attack someone who's at the table,
Yes,
and we ended up winning, but I sat there and thought for a long time, like, I kept thinking like, oh boy, I hope I didn't cross the line. I hope I, wasn't too abrasive. And the jurors liked it. They thought later on, they said to me, hey, we thought it was almost like if you didn't stick up for your staff, that you would have thought something odd about it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The jurors will be behind you if they think you're right. But that goes to your assessment, right, as a trial lawyer, as to what is appropriate in the circumstance. And sometimes you'll read, Twitter and social media has become an interesting thing in the courtroom now, because you can get a flavor about what people are thinking by going to seeing what is being reported out of the courtroom. And they'll say, it's hot in that courtroom, or, there's kind of aggression going on, and some people will hate it, other people will not. But and this is always the lesson for young lawyers, as you will tell them, that stop saying what's really happening in that courtroom, whether the jury likes this or doesn't like this, because the lawyer who's sitting right next to them or standing right next to them watching, they're the ones who you trust to have the pulse of that jury.
Correct.
And whether they're following you and liking you and rooting for you. And
right. A couple of questions.
You may not win, but you can tell them like you.
I watched these. I know people, and I've done it too, where who won the day, and you're like, nobody won the day. I mean, the days aren't, the days aren't won and lost. It's not like we're keeping a tally in the back. You're really just trying to win credibility and to win some moments, and be able to get to the point where the jury thinks that you have credibility in the point you're making. And if you lose that credibility, it's very hard to get it back with the jury, almost impossible.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
Okay. Favorite cross-examination moment that you've had in your storied career? And I'm putting you on the spot.
I have to think about this. Favorite cross-examination moment. Boy, this is a tough one, because I can't remember which one that I would like the most. Oh, I know. Yeah, I do know. Okay, now think about it. I had the pleasure of representing some people I had worked with at the prosecutor's office in New Jersey after I'd been out in private practice for a long period of time, doing the companion to criminal defense, which is, as I told you, civil rights cases, 43 USC 1983 cases, or employment cases that sometimes are also couched in civil rights, because you can do both. And it was a prosecutor of the office where I had worked with, and I was suing the subsequent prosecutor for a wrongful termination, which is very hard to do because of defamation. And I actually forget the actual defamation, but the prosecutor defendant got on the stand in federal court in New Jersey. And after he testified on his defense in this civil case, I just had one question for him. And I said, sir, I addressed him by his name. In the 13 years that this has happened, the 4 years that this case has been in litigation, the depositions, and now that we're in trial, have you ever apologized to my client sitting here? That was it. didn't answer the question. He didn't answer the question. I said, I withdraw the question, sat down, and that was it. That was my favorite cross-examination moment.
Wow. Okay. Powerful moment.
And we won.
So tell me either one that you've had or one that you've watched where you're watching a cross-examination and you're thinking to yourself, hey, like this is just not going well. Like Mark O'Mara shared with me a story during the Zimmerman trial where he was cross-examining Trayvon's mother, I believe. And he thought 3 questions into it, what am I doing? You know, like, why am I cross-examining her? And I was like, did you know it? He goes, oh, I knew it. I knew it when it was happening. So how about you? And if it's not one that happened to you, how about one that you observed in?
I know I can't remember one that I have not, because one of the things you can say that I am always prepared. I may not be the smartest dude in the room. I may not be the brightest dude in the room, but I'm always the most prepared dude in the room, okay, when I try a case. So I'm not sure about that. I think I'm pretty good with the pulse on that. Gosh, there's been so many I've seen on TV hosting that I cringe on cross-examination. I just cringe. I'm trying to think of what they are, but I really can't remember right now, but I know that I have watched a lot. And I say to myself, and I remember, I know this because I've talked to you about this, coming back home and saying, what are we doing in law schools? People just don't know how to cross-examine anybody anymore. They just don't. And I think we have had a failing there that we don't teach trial advocacy very well.
What do you think of the Chauvin defense?
I thought that the attorney did the best job he could. I mean, I really thought he was prepared. He was likable. He did a great job. He did. If I have to tell you, I thought this whole idea that there was carbon monoxide poisoning really would have offended the jury, and I would not have done that, no matter what type of defense you want to put in. I think that was just awful. And I do think the prosecutor, I have to tell you, the prosecutor, Steve Schlissler, who initially I was kind of like making fun of because I said, he's a tall white dude, in the courtroom and all. And he picked the jury and he wasn't as riveting, but he had one witness that, it was later in the day because I had the later shift. I had like the 4 o'clock shift, 3 to 6 shift, I guess it was that day. And he was calling at the end of the day. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, our time, East Coast time. He was calling a custodian of records to get the police camera videotapes in, right? And it ended up not just being that, it ended up being showing the death of George Floyd over and over again from every camera there was, car camera, body camera there was, to the point where it was like, I can't take it anymore. I'm sitting here, I'm in a studio, I can't take it anymore. People in my ear, they couldn't take it anymore. And I thought it was just some of the most effective use of a witness I'd ever seen. And from that moment on, I was like a Steve Schlissler fan.
Interesting. Wow, that's really pretty fascinating. Because you thought that he just done that good of a job with that particular witness.
Yeah, to me, he was the star of that team.
So, all right. So I've taken up so much of your time already. You're so gracious.
And it's fun talking to a lawyer who knows what they're doing and who loves to try cases where you can
I really do.
To really try a case.
I do. I really, and if I couldn't try cases, I don't know that I would do this, because this is, I would try to find something else to do. I've listened to a lot of young lawyers talk about how they love to be in trial and they love cross-examining. And I pulled a couple of them aside over the years and I've said, so you can say that to me and you can say that to your fellow lawyers, but you have to remember that when you say it in front of your client, remember that your client has got huge stakes. So when you say, I love to be in trial, I understand the passion and the, right? But when you say, I'd love to be in trial and in front of your client, it's like, does your client appreciate that and get confidence from that? Or do they sort of think that you're in it for the blood sport? So I've tried to pull some young lawyers aside and tell them, like, just, you got to, again, look at the people that you're representing and know whether or not they appreciate that.
Well, the reverse side too of that, because there are some people that hire you because they want to go at the prosecutor or, whoever you're dealing with, right, on the law enforcement side, and why do we have to take a plea? Why do we have to take a plea, right? Because you're going to beat them in the courtroom, and you have to explain to them that the courtroom is a courtroom. It doesn't necessarily mean that justice is going to be done. So sometimes the best thing you can do for your client is to try to get them the best deal that you can get them.
So let me ask you this. Like, what lies ahead for you? Obviously, you're doing the Law and Crime Network. I presume at some point we'll see you in the courtroom again, on, I presume, some big public case. If you can't talk about it, then you can't. But what lies ahead for you? Are we looking at books, more movies, another TV show? I'm interested because I think people would love to hear more from you and know more about what you're doing, other than where they would see you now.
I do a lot of work with lawyers right now because I am doing the TV show where I'm hired to put together the forensic case, which is fine, okay, which I like to do because I think I know it. I think I can do it very well, and I can pick and choose which ones will give me free rein, where I don't want to have to go into court and try a case. I am right now involved in a team that I can't say that is involved in a murder case. It was supposed to go to trial or get a trial date soon. You may see me next year in a courtroom in the middle of the country somewhere. All right. We're very few,
Hello, Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri. No, just
few and far between. As you know, as trial lawyers, we don't try many cases. You try your big cases, they go on for months, and then you may not try a case for a number of years, unlike when you're a prosecutor. When you're trying, cases, here's the file, go into court, try your case, and also where you get all that experience. So yeah, that's a possibility. I do love doing the law and crime hosting. It's just the first time I did it, though, I came home and I have to tell you, I went to sleep for like 2 days. I'm exaggerating, but it was such a different experience for me to have something in my ear, and then I had to make breaks, and I had to make hard breaks, and I had to talk to people, and I had to listen to producers, and I had to look at a rundown. I was exhausted because it was a new skill, and I'm just now getting really comfortable with that. And I do like it because I think I have the knowledge in a courtroom to ask good questions of our guests and to educate. Would I like to do it full time? I don't know. That opportunity hasn't come, so
I would imagine that would be something that will be presented to you. And not that I don't have any inside knowledge. I just can see that you have such a great resume. You've been involved in so many cases. You're so knowledgeable. You're obviously quite personable. And that's a rare quality. That's a rare combination of qualities. It's probably why you're so good in the courtroom, and it's why you're doing so well with your current, your TV show.
Yeah, and I lecture to people, and I get paid to do lectures, and I do like that because I do feel that unless you teach people what you know, or a little bit that you've learned, that it's going to go away. What's the point of having any knowledge about how you work a courtroom, how you do a courtroom, how you pick a trial, unless you teach people or share that knowledge? It's not something that's mine. It's not mine. It's something you've learned to give so that you can give it out to people. Like jury selection is the most important part of the trial. Like you have to control the well. Most people don't even know, lawyers don't even know what the well is in a courtroom. They don't know that the person with the burden of proof sits closest to the jury, do they?
Right. That boggles my mind, and it still boggles my mind. In Michigan, for example, that the prosecutor that, I know it's because they have the burden of proof, but they get the last chance to speak to the jury, which I still don't understand. Yes, they have the burden of proof, but it completely ignores the reality of the courtroom, or the reality of the world, which is, they're powerful. The presumption of innocence is a theory, and you have to try to figure out a way to explain that to the jurors. But they hear the prosecutor get up there a second time. It's like, it's unfair. It's like giving Mike Tyson a second chance. Oh, he needed another 15 seconds to knock you out. You survived that, the first round.
Yeah, no,
like another 15 seconds.
Right, I know. It's in New Jersey, where I grew up as a baby prosecutor. We didn't have that. You went first, defense went first, the prosecutor got one bite, and it was, I still felt it was unfair. I always thought the defense should go last because it is a system of, the whole system is for the defendant, even though people say it's for the victim. But the first time I had to try a case with the prosecutor getting the second bite where they, it was like, whoa, what is this? What? What?
If you could question anybody in court, I mean anybody, and I'll even go so far back as to say anybody in history, who would you choose to put in the stand and cross-examine?
William Shakespeare.
Why?
Because I want to know whether he wrote all that by himself, how he got all that knowledge, forensic knowledge into his plays, how did he do it? What came to him? How did he learn? And my husband and I have talked about this a number of times, that he knew that people in the ground would get tan skinned. He talked about the difference between suicide, and our dog is named 2B, our new dog, our new puppy, is named 2B for the greatest, line probably in play.
Yes, for sure.
And he talked about how, if did Ophelia Hamlet go to the water come to her, was it suicide? Was it a homicide? Was it an accident? I mean, just all this stuff that we incorporate into right now into trials, mental health, madness, effective family, power struggles. I mean, it's all there. And I think that would be a most interesting person to bring into modern day life.
I have a couple last things to ask you about. I have to ask, I'd be so remiss if I didn't ask. What were you thinking, if you can tell me, when Phil Spector, who walked into court that day with the hair, the big giant hair?
You watched the David Mamet HBO special.
I did. I watched.
And so this I can tell you, because this is something you can look up on the internet, maybe just a little bit later on. That didn't happen on my watch.
It didn't happen on your watch.
No, he did come in and bring in a some kind of doll. It's like a little hair with some kind of hamburger doll, because he thought it looked like Alan Jackson, the prosecutor. On the thing that he did do. But in fairness to Philip, okay, as you know, he had the car accident with very bad scarring. But he thought that his hair looked like his finger had been into an electric socket or electric chair. And he thought that's what the prosecutor wanted to do. So why not look like it? All right. I mean, Philip really had a very funny, wry sense of humor that people didn't know. And he and I got along very well in trial.
The movie sort of portrayed you in a way as in a role that a lot of people sort of overlook about lawyers with their clients, even very successful clients throughout these cases, which is that we do spend a lot of time counseling, encouraging, nurturing. I don't want to say mothering, because that, but in a way that is, sort of the additional role that we take on. And I thought in that way, the movie did show how much you came to be his call. You were the shoulder he leaned on. You had to sort of, I keep saying mother, I don't mean it in a demeaning way.
Right, no, you mean he trusted me. And if I said to Philip that if I needed something or wanted to do something, he trusted me. And there is that trust that has to go on between a client and an attorney. They really, especially in these high profile cases, remember, it's their life. I mean, no matter what happens, you're going home, and you're going to be, home to your family, or home to your puppy, or home to your cat, or home to your significant. You're going home. If you screw up and you get somebody wrongfully convicted, they're not going home, is what happened, I believe, in the second trial, or any case. So you better have that good relationship with your client.
So I want to let people know who don't know that if you want to learn more about Linda, I mean, clearly all you have to do is just type in Linda Kenney Baden. But Linda, you've taken part in the Aaron Hernandez case, Casey Anthony case, Philip Spector case, obviously. I'm getting this right off your website, which I want you to share with us in a second. You ended up obtaining dismissal of charges before a retrial after reversal by the Supreme Court a wrongly convicted individual who spent 22 years on death row.
Right, in
It had to be
Tennessee.
incredibly satisfying.
Yes.
You represented, I believe, Kevin Broadus, who was a Division I coach and ended up having a case of discrimination. Jayson Williams, obviously, he was a well-known basketball player, and I think he was actually a commentator at one point.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
And I'm looking
And
here.
by the way, he's doing very well. He has a facility in Florida where he takes people that really have issues, and he puts them through physical paces, and it's a very small facility, and he's doing, knock on wood, very well.
And took part in the team of forensic scientists attempting to locate the body of Pocahontas.
Yep, we did over in England, in those bottom of those places, looking for her a number of times.
What an incredible career you've had.
Yeah, hopefully it's not over yet. But you know what? On my site, and if I may, just a second, I was thinking about this because I don't really keep up my personal site that much because I'm just too busy. I mean, I kind of use my sites as landing spots. But the most significant case I think I ever had is one that no one will really know about or remember, and that was assigned pro bono when I was at my New Jersey firm. By the courts to represent a father who's in the military, whose child was taken away from him by our Division of Family Services because he got assigned to Panama, and his girlfriend, who had broken up with, who had the child, ended up being a drug addict and couldn't take care of the child. So they revoked the parental rights of her and him because he was in Panama serving our country. And I think that's the most significant case I ever had, is I fought all the way through to the New Jersey Supreme Court and got that child back for him. And he met his child at the airport in Newark and took him.
An amazing story.
Amazing story. Yeah, and it's just probably the most significant case I've had. And someday I'll go find this young man who probably is now, grown up.
So that is an incredible story. I don't know how I can possibly, I have to non sequitur from that really touching, incredible story about the power that lawyers can play in someone's life and the impact we can have. To just tell me if you would. I try to finish with, if people want to find you on the internet, they want to learn more about you, how do they do that?
You can go to my business site, which is Linda Kenney Baden, with the E in Kenney, Kenney, badenlaw.com, or my personal site. Again, I don't really keep it up, but it's lindakennybaden.com.
And if they want to watch you on Law and Crime Network, how would they do that?
You go to lawandcrime.com, and there are many different, we're like Netflix. We have our own app, and we are on platforms of many, many companies, including Peacock and all. On smart TVs, we're an app, and smart TV, a lot of the smart TVs and all. And it's a fairly new network, but it's growing very, very fast.
So it's fantastic. So Linda, I tell you, you don't realize how pleased I am that you chose to take part in this podcast. I have watched your career, and I've just watched you, and you're part of, I tell you, this is like being able to meet, it's like Field of Dreams for me to be able to go out, and I don't play baseball, but I'm like, wait, that's Shoeless Joe. That's Linda Kenney Baden. Oh my God, I can't believe it. That's Tom Mesereau. That's F. Lee Bailey. May he rest in peace. And yeah. I absolutely put you in that category of lawyer. You are a real inspiration. And so I do so much thank you for taking part in talking to me. And I hope that I get the chance to see you, in action again, which I no doubt will. And I hope one day I get the chance to see your, husband in a case nearby or on television again, which I'm sure I will. If I'm ever invited over for a dinner, though, we can't talk law or science because I can't hang with you guys. Oh,
you'd have a blast as long as you can take talking about causes of death and stuff like that. It's just very normal every day.
I know. I'm saying, and I say that in jest because one of the reasons why I do want to say this. One of the reasons why I wanted to have you on and wanted to talk to you was because I knew that you had such a sterling career and reputation. that was built long before you ended up and had really nothing to do with your husband.
Right.
And that this was your career, and one that you made, and one that you created, and one that you have worked so hard for. And that's why it was so important. That's why I kid about that, because what a meeting of the minds the two of you must have to, to talk about these things in such an intelligent family. But I do want to give you credit for that, because you've earned that. And so I didn't want you to think that in any way that I thought anything other. That's why I thought, Linda Kenney Baden, I wanted to talk to you about your career. So
thank you very much. But next time you can ask me how my husband and I met, and it'll be the starting point. And I hope we get to try a case together, by the way.
that would be
It'll be the starting point, because I will tell you the answer, and to pique your interest, and it was at an autopsy, but that's another day.
Okay, well, there you go. There's your teaser for next time. Linda, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Thank you so much.